Locked On Vikings, Locked On Chargers. Who can overcome their respective injury bugs? Let's hash it out with Locked On Chargers on Crossover Thursday on the Locked On Podcast Network.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Crossover Special. I am your host, David Drugmeyer of the Locked On Chargers podcast, and I am joined by Luke Braun of the Locked On Vikings podcast. And whenever the Chargers and Vikings get together, there's bound to be some craziness that ensues. We had a very crazy game the last time we played, and I'm sure this is going to be no different. So we're going to get into the biggest storylines and matchups. We'll get into the key matchups again, and of course, we'll finish things up with the keys to victory for each one of these teams. But before we get into it, Crossover Thursday is presented by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Luke Braun, how's it going, my man? Long time no talk. How is everything in Vikings world?
Boy, it's interesting here, but isn't that always the case for both of us? Two of God's least favorite children.
Yeah. The equivalents on both sides of the spectrum, on the AFC and the NFC, a lot of familiarity there. Obviously, the Chargers are hosting this game on Thursday night at SoFi Stadium. So as the host, I will go ahead and let you kick things off. What do you think is the biggest story for the Vikings heading into this game?
Right now in Minnesota, the biggest story is JJ McCarthy, high ankle. When's he going to be back? What's the expectation when he is back? And what can we expect from Carson Wentz in the meantime? Over the course of the week, the Vikings gave JJ McCarthy a workout, see how it goes. But the Vikings haven't done a full practice. They're coming off a really physical, really long game against the Eagles. With 69 offensive reps. Everybody's really beat up. So they've been really restful. And plus a short week travel to the West Coast, which this is the third time the Vikings will have done that on Thursday Night Football, specifically to LA, two against the Rams. This is the first one against the Chargers. It's horrible, especially 18 days after they get back from a doubleheader in Europe. They got brutalized by the schedule here. So rest has been really important. And now they just they're not practicing for a week. So that to me is part of, this is the roughest part of the schedule, not because of necessarily who the best teams in the league are, but just because of the travel. But obviously, the thing is how it was go into this week. Is he going to play? They give him a workout. He's not there. He's not going to do it. They said maybe if it were a Sunday game, but we're probably looking at JJ McCarthy returning next week against the Lions. So you all get Carson Wentz. Congratulations.
Yay.
It's been rough.
We wanted to see that storyline, right? Obviously, with Jim Harbaugh being the coach of the Chargers and his former quarterback, J.J. McCarthy being with the Vikings, we were all excited to have that be some storylines heading into this week, but that was not to be, as obviously both teams are dealing with significant injuries. And fortunately for the Chargers, they're getting some very important pieces back on that offensive line, and it is extremely important that they get Joel out there, and that is definitely the biggest story going into this week for the Chargers is getting some reinforcements back. After week 3, the Chargers were missing Joe Alt, Omarion Hampton, Najee Harris, Khalil Mack, Denzel Perriman, and plenty of other big pieces. And so now, we were talking a little bit before we started recording. Joe Alt is going to play. He said as much. He has missed the last several weeks with the high ankle sprain. They put him through a pretty rigorous workout last Sunday to see if he can go. He was doubtful for that game. He wasn't quite ready, but they had started his kind of practice. They didn't really want to put him on IR because if there's any chance to get him to play before the requisite 4 games, then they wanted to make sure to give him every opportunity to do that. And also, the Chargers already have a lot of guys on IR and designated to return, and there's only so many slots that they'll be able to utilize for that. So Joe Alt being back is
we're up against those
boost.
two. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, man. It is so important for them to get Joe Alt back because the Chargers offensive line has been a rough watch, Luke. It has been very, very tough. to see Austin Deckles out there trying to do his best to protect Justin Herbert's blind side, along with the rest of the just subpar play that we've seen. So getting him back on offense, getting Khalil Mack back, and hopefully more involved in the game plan. He only played 12 snaps in his first game back. He actually notched a sack along with within those 12 snaps, so pretty effective there, but very short day at the office. I expect that to expand quite a bit going into this game against the Vikings.
Yeah, we're right there with you with all of the injuries. A lot of guys going on IR designation to return. In fact, there's 121-day window. Maybe we're going to see it's a true questionable with Aaron Jones. I don't think he was designated out on the final depth chart or on the final injury report. So that's one to watch. However, it's an intriguing situation because Jordan Mason's been fantastic in his stead, and we might have a situation where you ride the hot hand there. But the Vikings are also, it's unclear who they're going to play at center. They have Ryan Kelly on IR right now. So the starting center is out. The backup center, Michael Juergens, dealing with a hamstring injury, went out in the Euro trip. Blake Brandel, who has never played center before, had to step in against the Browns D-line, which is a nasty D-line to have to do that against. Holds his own well enough to get the start against Philly. Total mess. Total disaster. Snaps going over Carson Wentz's head, giving up sacks.
I saw that.
So I don't know if they're going to stick with that again or if they're going to go, whoops, we kind of maybe got a little bit too wrapped up in the moment there. And they'll go back to Michael Juergens, who has been active, I think, and for all intents and purposes is past that hamstring injury. So there's all kinds of weird stuff, but we were down to 1 out of 5 starters on the O-line in London. So it's been a really rough injury season. And maybe that's kind of the story of this game is two teams that I'm going to correct me if I'm wrong here, underachieved based on the talent that they should have.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is due to injury and who can kind of overcome their problems a little better, who can figure out how to get more out of their depth.
That's 100% accurate. And I think for both of these teams, like it's been a struggle, especially for the Chargers, going up against some of the better teams, the better offenses. Like they just got their butts handed to them by the Indianapolis Colts. It was ugly. You know, they got beat by 2 touchdowns, and honestly, it could have been probably 3 or more. The Chargers were not sharp in that game, and they just got way too behind way too quickly. But I had one more question on the offensive line. We talked a little bit about it. Obviously, the left tackle of the Vikings popped up on the injury report very, very late with Christian Darrisaw. What do you have for that situation as far as his availability for tonight's game?
Yeah, Kevin Seifert covers the team for ESPN, and he kind of poked around about it. Essentially, after a big physical game against the Eagles, which Christian Darrisaw played all of. So for Chargers fans who haven't been watching this, Darrisaw's been on a pitch count sometimes this year as he's coming off of a horrible knee injury, ACL and MCL, that he suffered in SoFi on Thursday Night Football last time they made the Vikings do this. So we're going back to SoFi, but there's kind of been, play a full game and then you're a little bit still kind of recovering from it going into the next game, and you're either on a pitch count or you sit out it. So he is a true questionable right now. He was a DNP in the last practice report. But again, the Vikings only did walkthroughs. So all of these injury designations are estimates. So it's like even more cloudy and unknowable, but he had to get a little bit of treatment on that knee this week. And so it's a matter of, another one where if it were Sunday, he might be playing, but because it's a short week and there's travel to the West Coast and all these other factors, it's going to be touch and go. So if it's not Darrisaw, it would be Justin School, who has been a mess, just awful, and outplayed by Blake Brandel, who was drafted as a tackle, was a tackle in college, and actually I think played better than School when he had to go in because School got a concussion at one point. We've been down to third stringers in several places. But if I had my druthers, Blake Brandel would be the backup tackle, and then they would put Juergens back in at backup center. So we have a tackle playing tackle and a center playing center. But apparently, I don't know, the Vikings are smarter than that, I guess.
Offensive line issues for both of these football teams. I'm sure that might factor into some of these key matchups that we are about to get into, and we are going to do that right after this. All right. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Every day we make decisions, but on PrizePicks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of the football season with PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. Playing PrizePicks is such a fun, simple way to add excitement to football. You just pick more or less on player projections like Josh Allen's passing yards or Saquon Barkley's rushing for a touchdown, and you're in the game. I love how quick it is. You can just make your lineup in under a minute. My favorite part, PrizePicks just added stacks, so if I want to ride with a player, I can select their pass yards, rush yards, and touchdowns all in one lineup. And the new injury reboot feature, if your player leaves early and doesn't return, it won't count against you. How great is that? For this game tonight, you could go on with Justin Herbert to throw more or less than 1.5 passing touchdowns and combine that with Justin Jefferson going for more or less than 79.5 passing yards. It is that simple. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after you place your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it is good to be right. I also need to tell you guys about Gametime. NFL season is back, and honestly, there is nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle. Between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout, it's frustrating. That's why I use Gametime, this app that gives you the advantage and gives it back to the fans. Gametime is fast, easy, and backed by the Gametime guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. I pulled up a Gametime, and in just a couple of tabs, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite NFL games as low as $100. This app made it super simple. I could even see the exact view from my seat before buying. Honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets. For this game tonight in primetime, you can still get in this pivotal game for only $30. That is insanely low. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. All right, we are back here on this crossover special. I am your host, David Drogemar of the Locked On Chargers podcast, joined with the host of the Locked On Vikings, Luke Braun, and we have to get into some of these key matchups that may determine this football game. So I think I'll let you go first to start the first segment, so I'm going to go ahead and kick things off here. One of the very, very important matchups in this game is the very blitz-happy Brian Flores versus the Chargers offensive line. Both of the tackles have been limited participants all week. And obviously, just like the Vikings, they haven't been doing much of any actual practicing. It's really just been trying to recover and get ready for this Thursday night game. But the Chargers have been giving up an extreme amount of pressure, and they're going up against one of the more creative and blitz-happy defensive coordinators in the league. The biggest difference between this matchup this time is between this time and last time the Chargers had Corey Linsley, one of the best centers that they've had in a very, very long time, and that unfortunately is not the case. The Chargers have really struggled kind of with protections and really identifying blitzers and giving up free rushers. That can't happen against this team. The Minnesota Vikings are going to stress you out. They are going to try to send the house. They're going to really test your discipline, your communication, and your ability to identify who's coming and who's dropping back. Justin Herbert really played exceptionally well against the Vikings last time. Justin Herbert's been pressured 27 times last game and was sacked 3 times. I'm sure if the Minnesota Vikings see those numbers, which I'm sure they have, they're probably licking their chops trying to get after this Chargers offensive line.
They are coming off of a really bad blitz game against the Eagles. So I think they're a little bit of a bad taste in their mouth, especially on the pressure end of things. And a bad taste in their mouth coming off of the way that 2024 ended with, a nightmare disaster in Detroit and then a nightmare disaster in the wild card round against Los Angeles. The Rams, they both of those games, they failed to get pressure kind of all day. And now it happens again and they lose to Jalen Hurts. So they've kind of had this tug of war between their run defense, which has struggled all year. This last game, they change a bunch of things, try to fix the run defense, and it works, but at the cost of taking a lot of their favorite pass rushers and blitzers off the field. So it's kind of, where is the middle ground in that? And what I think they really, really, really want on defense is a game where they can stop a run game. And I know the Chargers are missing a couple running backs, but still a good running team. And Jim Harbaugh will always have a good running team until the end of time. But so I still feel like stopping up this run game would be a feather in their cap if they can do that and get pressure at the same time instead of fully committing to one or fully committing to the other and letting whatever they don't commit to move the ball on them all day. That's kind of what this season has been for Brian Flores' defense. You either give up 200 on the ground or 450 through the air. And what's funny, I don't know how much the Chargers remember what happened to the Vikings after the last two times these teams played, but you probably remember that game. Keenan Allen goes for 200 yards,
yes.
Right?
Yes.
So that was the third game of Brian Flores in Minnesota. And the original vision of the defense used press alignments to try to disrupt stuff before backing into zones. But that really, really died to a veteran receiver who could run a slant without getting disrupted by press alignment, and a quarterback whose timing was good enough to make that happen.
Yeah.
And so they just hit that over and over and over and over and over and over again. And it was very clearly this like hole in the plan, this total flaw they found the little spot on the Death Star, And so after that game, Brian Flores went totally back drawing board and decided that he was never going to play press man again. And they basically don't anymore. They did a little bit last week in the Eagles. I mean, every team does a little, but they are not a man cover team at all, and they kind of haven't been. That game was sort of the last one that they needed to really go from alpha version to beta version to the real launch. So it'll be interesting to play the Chargers again, considering that last time they didn't really know what they were doing with this new defangled defensive scheme. And now it's had a couple years and it's totally calcified into a much more balanced thing. So I'm very curious to see how they do it and how they handle Keenan Allen, who I know is not the guy he was 2 years ago, but is still a savvy route runner and probably matches up well against the mostly smaller corners that the Vikings have. The only one they have over 6 foot is Jeffrey Okudah. And how they can kind of protect those matchups and stop this from just becoming the Keenan Allen show again.
Yeah, I think that would you say that's probably one of the matchups that you're going to be paying attention to is whoever's going to be covering Keenan? Because another thing is,
and they play sides, so it's going to be up to the Chargers to put those matchups together, which is why the matchup question is always hard. It's like I can't say our CB1 versus your wide receiver one. Like you get to put Ladd McConkey wherever you want. It's also going to be a bunch of zones. So like there's not really matchups in zone. It's really about the Chargers front, like you said, picking up those blitzes and Justin Herbert being able to get the ball out productively when he's hot. And that's really the challenge of Flores is, most quarterbacks are reasonable at least. If you're getting blitzed, you're getting lit up, there's an unblocked player, get the ball to the check down. Yeah. But if you do that 70% of the time, you suddenly have an offense that's throwing for 2 yards a pop and you can't move the ball. So being able to beat the blitz and keep the ball moving downfield is the goal. And teams that have been able to do that, namely the Lions with Jared Goff, have had a lot of success against this defense.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. They're going to try to use Keenan Allen. They're going to try to use Ladd McConkey, who Keenan Allen actually had over 100 yards receiving in the game against the Colts. So he's still humming. He's still on the same page with Justin Herbert. That chemistry is long-standing. I think for me, the Chargers trio of pass rushers versus the stellar tackles, obviously now we don't know if they're actually going to play tonight, but Khalil Mack is going to ratchet it up. He's going to get more snaps. They obviously traded for Odafe Owe of the Baltimore Ravens, and you have Tuli Pelotu, who's leading this team in pressures and in sacks, and is playing honestly very, very good football. So that is going to be a huge matchup that helps decide this football game, is how both of these offensive lines are able to handle the pass rushers, but also, they're going to have to earn the right to be able to rush the passer, right? Both of these teams are going to have to do that by being more successful on the early downs to try to set up those possibilities to get after the quarterback. It's going to be exceptionally important. And of course, as we wrap this thing up here or get close to wrapping this thing up, we have to get into the keys to victory for each one of these teams, what each one of these teams have to do to pick up a big prime time victory on Thursday Night Football tonight. And we're going to get into that right after this. But first, I got to tell you guys about Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same attention to how we craft every model. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Nappa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, we're back here on this crossover Thursday as we have a big matchup tonight. I am Locked On Chargers host David Drogemeyer with Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings, and we're at that part of the program where you got to get into the keys to victory, what each one of these teams need to do to pick up a big win at kind of the close to the midway point of the NFL season. Obviously 17 games can't quite get in the middle, but this is as close as it gets. So a big time game. As far as the Vikings are concerned, Luke, what do the Vikings need to do to be able to pick up a big win on Thursday Night Football tonight?
The biggest thing I always say when we ask this question is take care of the football. Win the turnover battle. Maybe I'll do
yes.
I'll broaden that. The Vikings have not generated a turnover since week 3.
Whew.
And they've lost the turnover battle in all of their all of the games they're in. Obviously asking Carson Wentz to take care of the football is a tall order, but we're going to do our best. But they've had fumble problems too. And for whatever reason, teams have been conservative enough and safe enough. And, the Steelers and Browns took really, really conservative game plans. And I think the Eagles just kind of did a good job of pushing the ball and getting open enough where none of the throws had to be dangerous, that the Vikings couldn't really be the turnover generating force that they used to be, and the blitzes weren't getting home either because the Chargers or the other team was getting the ball out quickly, or because their blitzes were just failing and getting picked up versus Philadelphia. So for the Chargers, taking care of the football and getting the ball out quickly, not holding the ball, not trying to get long pockets, big shot plays, is going to be crucial. But I mean, it's probably not anything groundbreaking. Whoever wins the turnover battle wins the game most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, obviously turnovers are exceptionally important. For the Chargers, every single game they've lost this year, they've lost the turnover battle. It's really almost distinctly linked to wins and losses in the NFL. It's extremely important. I think for me, my first one is just find more balance on offense. Like the Chargers got to be able to run the ball more effectively, more efficiently, especially against the Vikings, who have a great pass defense. They have a fantastic pass defense, which is obviously helped by their pass rush. But their running game, run defense is more around middle of the pack. So the Chargers can't have Justin Herbert really dropping back 50 plus times like they did against the Indianapolis Colts. You got to have more balance. You have to run to be able to set up the pass and really capitalize on those opportunities that you find. But they have to have more of a semblance of a running game against the Vikings in this game.
Yeah, that will be an interesting one, because I don't know if the Vikings are prioritizing their run defense as strongly as they did against Philadelphia, and they held Saquon Barkley to 44 on the ground. It's one of the worst games Barkley's had. But at what cost? They were blitzing with 4 D tackles, and nobody was winning up front. I mean, it was like, and then Jalen Hurts has a 153 passer rating, all these busted coverages down, because you're sending 6 guys, 5 in coverage, and you're not getting home. So now you have time in the pocket, a clean pocket, and a 5-man coverage. You're smoked. There's no way you're not going to give up a big play there. So I don't know what kind of Vikings defense you're going to get. I'm going to be honest with you, David. The Vikings are in flux right now. Everything is up in the air. I don't know if they're a run first defense or a pass first defense. I don't know if they're an offense where the run game can get going with Jordan Mason, or if Aaron Jones is going to come back and be part of it. And I don't know if that's going to be better. I don't know if they're going to be able to move the ball despite all of the very good receivers that they have. We haven't talked about Justin Jefferson at all. And that's because there's so many other big problems on the Vikings that have rendered a receiver group that, let me be honest, is always open. They have been destroying people, and it's gone to waste as the quarterbacks get sacked for the 9th time. It's been very frustrating, and the Vikings don't really know who they are. Half the position groups have a benching or like an open competition deep into October of who's the better player. Like, they don't know who's good on their team. They don't know what they want to do with these players, and whatever plan they walked into the season with is completely out the window, as injuries and I think just general kind of things not going the way they wanted to have sent them into chaos. So the Vikings really need, here's the key, and there's not going to be a way to measure this. They have to get back to basics. They have to settle back into their staples, know what they can do, know what they're good at. Whether it's some of the intermediate concepts that are like staples to McVay, whether it's zone running, whether it's blitzing, or maybe not blitzing and just zone coverage, what their bread and butter is, they need to go back to that and just execute what they can execute, even though they've got a bunch of backups on the field, and hope that after a mini bye, Thursday night football, 10 days before the next game and going into a stretch of a lot of divisional games, hope that they've figured it out and that they have a more organized approach, because it's been really disorganized, really chaotic, and ultimately a wildly disappointing season. It's an ugly 3-3.
Yeah. Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, obviously, I'm sure, are going to play heavily into that game plan, getting them involved, getting the ball in their hands. That's going to be something that's going to be obviously always important to the Vikings offense. I saw that, quick little pass over to Justin Jefferson and, watch him kind of tightrope down the sideline and take it for 30 or 40 yards or whatever it was. Like,
yeah.
He's a big play machine ready, waiting to happen.
And don't sleep on Jalen Naylor, who's been open all year long. He's obviously not going to often be above Jefferson or Addison in the progression. So you have to get to the third read, which if Carson Wentz is the quarterback, forget about it. But he's been killing people on go routes. He is somebody you absolutely have to respect deep. And so they can really take the top off the defense and generate all these opportunities. O'Connell's had guys flying all over the field wide open, and it's just a matter of executing what is in front of you. If everyone can just do their job, and even if they don't all win their reps all the time, just attempt the right job. Try to block the right guy. Try to run the right route. As long as the Vikings do that, it's great, without any penalties or stupid turnovers or bozo plays, and they just haven't been able to get through 60 minutes without that stuff rearing its head.
Yeah, it really just feels like the Chargers as well. The Chargers have had a lot of problems, and the run defense has been horrendous, and really, honestly, coming off a game where the Indianapolis Colts really just had their way with the Chargers. It was ugly, and I know they're embarrassed. They absolutely were embarrassed by that game.
I think two heated teams coming in. They're both going to be mad. I think the Vikings are mad because this is not the season they wanted to have.
Yeah, no, and after starting the season 3-0 and 3-0 in the division, things have kind of fallen back to earth. And all of a sudden, they're not in first place anymore. They're looking up at the Broncos, and they need to win this game. So, two things real quick. For me, the Chargers have to keep their tight ends involved. Oronde Gadsden II has been absolutely incredible. Their 5th-round pick that they traded up for. 7 catches, 164 yards, and a touchdown in the last game against the Indianapolis Colts. 14 catches for 232 yards over the last 2 weeks. He's been heavily involved and been extremely productive. And then special teams need to be special. They got to tighten up the kick coverage. You can't allow the big kickoff returns. They allowed an 81-yard kickoff return last week to the Indianapolis Colts. That can't happen. They absolutely got to clean that up. And also, their all-pro return man, Darius Davis, has been close, right? It seems like he's in, for a big return. And if he's able to do that, and the Chargers are able to just improve their special teams and their field position on both sides, offense and defense, then they're going to give themselves a good chance to win this game on Thursday night here tonight.
Yeah. The Vikings return game has been terrible. They've been really unable to block. There's been free men running in at the returner quite a bit. Their kick coverage game has been a little bit better, but the special teams for the Vikings have been up and down. The punter's been really good, and Will Reichert has been a revelation. I think it's so funny, Vikings and Chargers walking into a game where both teams are like pretty happy with their kicker, which means, that's not good. Something bad might happen. Which leads me to a question I have for you, David, because I'm trying to do this on every crossover if I can remember to. But I have a tradition on Locked On Vikings. For every game, we do bold predictions submitted by the listeners. And if they're right, I donate $20 to a charity of their choice, and I want to bring you in on this. So, David, do you have a bold and I like get spicy, all right?
Okay.
You got to go hard. Do you have a bold prediction for this game?
Yeah, so I did one on my show yesterday, but I'll do a different one for the sake of this particular challenge. I am going to say that Justin Herbert is going to throw for over 400 yards again tonight. That's going to be my bold prediction.
I think I can get FanDuel odds on that.
Yeah.
To see just how bold it is. If you want to join in with David. But if you're right, I will donate $20 to I assume LA area charity of your choice. And I'll add that to the list. Real quick, just tacking on to the end here, I did look up that bold prediction from David on FanDuel. It does not go that high. It doesn't go to 400 plus yards. It only goes to 375, and 375 is at plus 1,200 right now. So definitely sufficiently bold. I will see you all after the game. And as always, Skull.